Tonight on Primetime Politics, the pitfalls of trade.
It's important for us to be at the table in those countries where we have differences, but also where we have opportunities.
The Prime Minister leads a trade mission to India, but here at home leaves behind questions about foreign interference and transnational intimidation, allegedly stemming from agents of the Indian government. Coming up, the Auto Bureau chiefs will walk us through the government's response to those concerns and the controversy they caused. Also,
I'm going into the House of Commons. I go in every day to make sure that this country becomes a more fair, just place for working class Canadians.
Alberta MP Heather McPherson and why she wants to lead the federal NDP. This is Primetime Politics. Hello everyone, I'm Michael Strapio. Well, Canada's trade mission to India is garnering a lot of attention, positive attention, for the business and economic potential of trading with India, but also negative attention over questions of transnational aggression and a statement made by an unnamed government official. Now, Canada's relationship with India has been improving since Prime Minister Carney invited Narendra Modi to Canada last May, invited to observe a gathering of the G7 in Kananaskis. But it was not that long ago when agents of India were accused by then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of being involved in the killing of a Canadian citizen, an allegation that was followed by the final report of the Ogue Commission, which concluded India is a source of foreign interference and its agents accused of targeting members of the Sikh Canadian community. But those concerns are apparently no longer concerns for Ottawa, as an unnamed senior official did tell reporters this week the government does not believe that India engages in that kind of meddling anymore. Well, earlier today I did speak with the Auto Bureau chiefs about that briefing, all of them saying the conclusion drawn by that official is just too incredible to believe. Here now is a part of my conversation with Robert Fife of the Globe and Mail, Mia Rabson from the Canadian Presse, and Joël-Denis Bellavance from La Presse. So, you know, it was an unnamed government official who made that conclusion, but there has been some pushback, including amongst Liberals. I'm going to begin here with Sukh Dhaliwal, a Liberal MP who went to social media. This is what he said. I firmly denounce remarks by a government official downplaying India's transnational repression. They contradict assessments from the NSIA, the RCMP, and CSIS. This matter must be addressed, and the individual's conduct and suitability for their role must be reviewed. You've all been working on this story. You've been reaching out to members, current, past members of Canada's intelligence community. What are they telling you about this assessment that was shared in this background briefing?
Well, first of all, this is a senior government official. We're not allowed to say so because we made an agreement that this person could brief us with anonymity. I question whether we should have done that now, but nonetheless, this is the agreement that journalists made. But is a senior official, very trusted by the Prime Minister. And the fact that this person would make an incredulous statement like that has been astounding. Former members of CSIS, Jody Thomas, a former National Security Advisor, Liberal MPs, academics, anybody who has been involved in dealing with transnational repression and foreign interference in this country are just, their heads are shaking because it makes no sense. First of all, CSIS would never, ever say that anybody has stopped doing something, because you can never know when somebody's not going to do something. And to make a statement like that is so bold that all of a sudden India stopped doing this, I mean, it makes absolutely no sense, and there's nobody that takes this person seriously, except obviously the Prime Minister. They tried to do damage control on this, Michael. They sent out the Foreign Affairs Minister yesterday in a CBC interview, which is rather pathetic because she couldn't, she was repeating talking points, but she didn't disavow the official. She never said that he was right. And I guess it comes down to this. India's always said that these are lies, despite all the evidence about them. And so are we to believe that all of a sudden India says, yeah, it's all true, but we were just saying those lies for public, but don't worry, we're not going to do that anymore. None of this makes any sense. And what's going to be bad for the Prime Minister is he's going to meet reporters on Monday. Guess what all the questions are going to be?
Absolutely. Mia?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Canada has trouble making trips to India that don't go off the rails. And I think at this point, a trip that last week seemed to be set up to have maybe some positive outcomes. All of a sudden, once again, we're talking about the issue that Prime Minister Mark Carney did not want to have to talk to. He's been trying to set up for the last year, law enforcement discussions and dialogues so that they can try and deal with this issue on one hand and sort of keep the economic stuff separate, which already, there are those who criticize doing that, but he's been trying to sort of put those into compartments, and that just kind of has completely been upended for him. It is impossible to believe that India suddenly just said, yeah, we're not going to do that. 2 days before this official said this, the RCMP gave a duty to warn to yet another sick Canadian and sort of who's an activist for separatism from India. It's hard to believe that 2 days before this duty to warn was given, and suddenly that's, again, not related to anything that's similar that's been going on for the last several years. It's just kind of incredulous. And then the government kind of silent on it. I mean, Public Safety Minister was asked about it yesterday. He didn't agree with him, but he also didn't say he was wrong. And same with the Foreign Affairs Minister. Not agreeing, kind of trying to find ways to excuse what was said, but not saying he was wrong. And unless the Prime Minister comes out before Monday and gives a strong statement about what is going on, this is going to dog him for this entire trip.
Joël-Denis?
Well, this issue, I think, is sort of the first blunder on foreign affairs by the Carney government. The senior government official was talking for Mr. Carney, presenting the views of the government in front of reporters before he left for the trip. So it's true that Mr. Carney wants to turn the page on the issue of foreign meddling from India, try to start a new, reset the relationship. But the government official not only tried to turn a page, but tried to rip it up as this never existed. So it's a major blunder, and it still affects the diaspora community in Canada from India, which we all know from the Foreign Interference Commission are the first victims of foreign interference. So it's a major blunder. There's damage to be fixed by the Prime Minister on this issue, not only with the diaspora community, but also with his own people inside the government. When you speak for me, make sure you speak the right tone and the right way about the government.
I mean, as late as November, CSIS Director Dan Rogers, in a speech, annual speech, identified China and India as the main culprits in terms of transnational repression and foreign interference. So, in a few months' time, that has all suddenly gone away. None of this makes any sense. It's just, yes, it's a blunder, but one former CSIS manager said, talk about naivety.
There was also a cavalier way that it was provided, or the information was said. It was along the lines of, well, if we thought that was still happening, we probably wouldn't be going on this trip. Yeah. It was sort of not even taking it seriously in the answer to the questions, and worth noting, repeated multiple times, because I can tell you the reporters that were in that room, their jaws dropped when he said that.
Yeah, and all he had to do was simply say, we expect India to live up to its its promises that it won't interfere in Canadian affairs or be involved in that transnational repression. End of story, and we'd be on our way to watch
the same lines they've been giving for the last 6 months. Yes.
And the government will remain vigilant about foreign affairs, and that's it. You don't cause any stir before the Prime Minister heads to India.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, at the start of this month, we did have the National Security Advisor from India come to Ottawa, and that individual did have meetings with the Public Safety Minister as well as the Prime Minister's National Security and Intelligence Advisor. And out of that, they talked about working together on issues of security, on working together on any questions. They didn't really say, not surprisingly, transnational aggression, but they were talking about security concerns that they would be working on together. I'm wondering if the way this official, behind closed doors and, as you say, unnamed, has undermined any confidence we could have in that process if what this demonstrates is a government willing to turn a blind eye for trade on any security concerns that existed just, 16 months ago.
Well, look, first of all, I applaud the process that they're doing. Absolutely, we need to be, our intelligence and law enforcement agencies need to be in regular communications with the Indians. Part of the problem that has happened over the last decade is that relationship was not there. And India felt very strongly that the Trudeau government was cozying up for domestic electoral purposes to the Sikh separatist movement in Canada, which is not as big at all, frankly, in Punjab. And I think, and because they're very nationalistic, I think they said, well, you know what, we're going to take this into our own hands. And they've done it in Pakistan, they've done it in England, and they did it here because they killed a Canadian citizen, and the RCMP has alleged that they've been involved in other murders as well. So there's no excuse for that. But the fact that the Carney government is trying to open a dialogue to avoid these kind of transnational repressions in the future is a good thing.
And getting the cooperation of Indian law enforcement and India, because before Mark Carney took over, that was one of the big issues, is there was no cooperation. It was one of the reasons that led to the big sort of ousting of diplomats in 2024, is that we couldn't get any kind of cooperation. So to have that, a place for that dialogue to happen, to have that cooperation, to share information and evidence back and forth, did seem like a step forward. But it's doing that doesn't mean that it's not happening, and that's the message that was sent by this official.
And we know it in the United States.
Yeah.
A guy just pleaded guilty.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Joël-Denis, any thoughts on that?
No, I think my colleague said it all. I wanted to say so.
Okay, listen. As we kind of watch that story, there is another story happening here. You mentioned this. Actually, it was off camera, but we were talking a little bit about the speech on Davos. We have to stop talking off camera. So the Davos speech, the Prime Minister talked about the importance of middle powers coming together. So here he is on this mission, going to India, then Australia, then Japan, all middle powers. How important is this trip on that level? Yes, there's an economic play to be had here, but what about the political play internationally for Mark Carney and for Canada as it looks to assert itself globally?
Well, look, the Prime Minister has made it very clear that we have to diversify away from the United States as much as we possibly can. India is the perfect place to be going. It is the world's most populous country now. Its growth, economic growth rates are really, I think are like 6 or 7, 8%.
Yeah.
It's very high.
Yeah.
And they're beginning to tear down very high barriers. So it's great for us to get into that market. And it is a democracy, despite what's going on with Prime Minister Modi. And it's a really smart move to get in there. And certainly the same thing with Japan. We have a great relationship with Japan. In fact, most of their car plants are in Canada. Mm-hmm. We have more Japanese car plants in Canada than American car plants, and Australia shares very much the same values that we do. So all of this is really smart play by the Prime Minister. We see him playing this in Europe and in Asia, and so I think that he's trying to do the most that he possibly can to diversify trade and to build relationships outside the United States. In fact, there were figures just released the other day that showed that the direct foreign investment in Canada has really shot up, which is the first time in more than a decade, I believe.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Mia, how important is this trip beyond the economics, would you say?
It's the first trip that he has had since he made that Davos speech, and so it's kind of a chance for him to put his money where his mouth is, so to speak. India, it is not an economy we can ignore. We have a lot of ties between Canada and India, people-wise, education-wise. There's already a lot of those connections. So why not see what we can do to improve that relationship? It's worth noting that Canada's a little bit behind on some of that. Some of our other allies, not the United States meaning, but other allies are sort of ahead of us because of the issues we've had with India. But we absolutely need to sort of make sure that they are part of this conversation. Australia is not necessarily a big trading partner for us, but politically, they have a lot in common with Canada. I know that the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, is quite tight with Mark Carney. They have a lot in common that way. So having those kinds of allies on the world stage absolutely is important. And Japan is another G7. It's the only G7 country, I think, at this point that Carney has not actually visited in the last year. So that is an important part of it. But he made some pretty strong statements in that speech in Davos, and I think, to quote one person we talked to this week, sort of Canada's having a moment in mostly in Asia, they were referring to, and so it's a chance for him to go and sort of prove to some of those people what he was talking about, what Canada's willing to do.
Joël-Denis?
The timing of that trip is very interesting. This week you had this speech on the State of the Nation in the United States. Mr. Trump did not mention Canada, except to say that we had a great Canadian team, hockey team that faced the American teams. But other than that, so we were left alone in that speech. And we asked the Prime Minister whether they had listened to that speech from Mr. Trump, and he said no. So you pivot, and then you don't listen to that speech, and you pivot, and you go to try to find new markets. I find that very interesting, and it just shows that politically speaking, we're getting a lot more independent from the United States, not watching too much the circus in Washington and focusing on the real things for Canadians, which is trying to find new markets. And the reset with India is important because there's talk of a free trade agreement, and let's not forget that India concluded recently a free trade deal with the European Union and also with Mercosur. With the European Union also concluded a deal with Mercosur. So Canada is also following steps of the European Union, which makes it, sort of the kind of a part of the pact of middle powers trying to go around the United States, which has a very protectionist policies.
Yeah, I'm going to add 2 points to what you shared there. When it comes to India, it is the world's third largest in purchasing power of any country around the world. And I will also say that I was speaking to Veena Najibullah earlier this week with the Asia Pacific Foundation, and she just came back from a trip from the Indo-Pacific region, and she said post-Davos, countries that she's speaking to, they are all interested in speaking with Canada right now, so it creates a window of opportunity, which is why we're following this trade mission so closely.
Right? I mean, it's worth noting that those countries, just like Canada, are also trying to find a way away from the United States.
Exactly.
So just quickly on that one, you mentioned the speech from Davos. I think it's a moment for Mr. Carney to try to reap the benefits of that speech.
Yep.
That was so remarkable and remarked across the planet. So he's, I think, trying to reap the benefits, but the economic dividends of that political speech.
And that was Robert Fife, Mia Rabson, and Joël-Denis Bellavance, part of this week's episode of the Bureau Chiefs with Michael Serapio, a PrimeTime Politics podcast. There's a new episode out right now. You can download and listen to it anywhere you get your podcasts, and you can also watch it on YouTube. Well, as noted with the Bureau Chiefs, the Prime Minister is right now in India, arriving in the city of Mumbai mid-afternoon local time, but very early this morning for Canadians here at home, embarking on a trade mission that could, if the speculation is correct, end with a number of trade deals being signed before this trip is done. Take a look at the official schedule. The Prime Minister will be in India, Mumbai, followed by New Delhi. He will be there up to and including March the 2nd. And from there, the trade mission will move on to Australia. First to Sydney, then to Canberra, where the Prime Minister will address the Australian Parliament, and then it is off to Japan before heading home. A very busy schedule as Parliament here in Ottawa enters a break week. Well, we've talked a lot about the India leg of this trip. Let's now focus in on the Australia portion of this trade mission. Mark Romoff is the chair and the CEO of the Australia-Canada Economic Leadership Forum, an organization that works to broaden and deepen ties between the two countries. Now, earlier I was speaking with him. We discussed the potential of increasing trade between Canada and Australia, though, as Mark will tell you, it is mutual investment that has the power to make big projects and priorities happen. I'm going to actually build on the investment front, because I think for most people at home, if, for example, they get a bottle of wine made in Australia and an Australian gets a Roots sweatshirt made in Canada, that's an easier translation for people at home. But when you talk about investment, talk about how important that is, because really when you talk about investment, what you're talking about is a means of generating economic activity for Canadians with Australian dollars and for Australians with Canadian dollars, right?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And as I mentioned, total investment more than $200 billion now, very impressive number. And the reality is that our Maple 8 pension funds have been active in Australia for years. Very significant investments in Australian toll roads, electricity grids, sustainable infrastructure, and even digital assets like data centers. An example is the Canadian Pension Plan Investment Board, CPPIB, which has a major investment in a company called AirTrunk, and that is all about data centers and how important they are today when you think about AI and the implications for energy needs. So that's one very good example. At the same time, Australian pension funds are now looking to go international. They have historically been very domestically oriented. The situation is quite different from between Canada and Australia. We've got our funds that are going overseas, and government wants them to be more active in Canada. It's the reverse in Australia. So now is an opportunity here as we look to have our pension funds build their portfolios in Canada and Australia to look more at Canada as a partner, really important. And you would have seen, for instance, in the last few weeks, that a major pension fund called IFM Investors established an office in Toronto and are now partnering with local pension funds, in this particular case with the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, where they together bought a company called Enwave, which you might know well. Mm-hmm. And that's a major investment and really indicative of the kinds of projects that can be developed through these kinds of partnerships.
So with this trade mission then, what's your hope? That the means of doing this kind of transnational investment becomes more easy with less regulation? What are you looking for in this trip then?
We're looking for a couple of things. One, we need to put more of a spotlight on the Canada-Australia relationship. As good as it is and as well known as it may be known to some people, it's not well enough understood because we have a little bit of that tyranny of distance that you referred to just a few minutes ago. So it's a long way away, but the reality is that there is opportunity now, given that both countries are facing the same global realities. There's an opportunity here to partner. And whether it's on major infrastructure projects, pension plan investments for sure, that's one, critical minerals, defense and security, a huge issue, and digital innovation involving AI, quantum technologies. These were all areas of real opportunity where we have the potential to partner. People often see Australia and Canada as competitors, but the reality today is that we have an opportunity to collaborate in ways that were not as possible in previous years, but because of the current situation and coercive trade policies, both in the US and in China, we have an opportunity here to work together, to learn from each other on how to deal with these partners. And hopefully that will allow us, in fact, to build the partnerships which will remove our dependence upon these other markets and really build opportunities between our two countries and to work together in the Indo-Pacific. Both countries, of course, have very big Indo-Pacific strategies, and we see opportunities for Canadian companies to partner with Australian companies in other parts of the Indo-Pacific in the same way that Australia sees partnership opportunities with Canadian companies in North America.
And again, that was Mark Romoff from the Australia-Canada Economic Leadership Forum. On March 9th, New Democrats will start voting to decide who the next leader of the federal party will be. 5 candidates vying for that job. They are Union Leader Rob Ashton, BC Local Councillor Tenniel Johnston, filmmaker Avi Lewis, Alberta MP Heather McPherson, and Ontario farmer Tony McQuail. Now, over the next few weeks, we will interview each of these candidates for an upcoming episode of Profile with Michael Serapio, and we will play segments of those interviews right here on Primetime Politics so that you can come to know these leadership hopefuls and their platforms a bit better. Now, earlier this week, we did hear from Tony McQuail. Take a listen now to part of the conversation I had earlier today with Alberta NDP MP Heather McPherson as we talked about her priorities, what they would be if she were to be the leader, and the role she would play in Alberta's upcoming referendum and the potential referendum in Quebec. You say you win this leadership and you are the next NDP leader. How do you deploy your caucus, you and the 6 additional NDP members in the House of Commons? How do you deploy that to make any type of impact with this government?
Well, first of all, I'm not so certain that this government wants to be influenced. Mr. Carney has not really shown an appetite to working with any of the opposition. He doesn't seem to respect how Parliament works. So, you can only dance if somebody wants to dance. You can only partner if that's something that somebody else wants to do. That said, I think that we should make it very, very clear to the Liberal Party that if they are doing things that are good for Canadians, if they are doing things that will benefit working class Canadians in this country, they will be able to count on New Democrat support. If they are doing things that are helping their corporate friends, if they are doing things that are making life harder for Canadians, which we are seeing time and time again, then they can't count on our support. We won't be there for that. I'm going into the House of Commons. I go in every day to make sure that this country becomes a more fair, just place for working class Canadians, to make sure that the people who right now are getting left behind have somebody fighting for them.
National unity is going to be an issue in this country.
Sure is.
We know that your home province the government there, the UCP government, will be putting 9 questions to Albertans to vote on, referenda to vote on, some of them touching on the Constitution. If you are the leader, even if you're not the leader of the NDP, federal NDP, what do you see as your role in those referenda questions?
I've thought about this a lot, and I do think that I have a really important role in this as the only New Democrat in Alberta, the only federal representative that is in fact not government or the Conservatives. I do think I play an important role, and I think, like all politicians across this country, we should all be able to say, you know, I'm an extraordinarily proud Albertan. I'm proud of what Alberta has done to contribute to Canada, but I am also a staunch, proud Canadian, and the Canada I love includes Quebec. The Canada I love includes Alberta. And we need to be pushing back on the divisive rhetoric that we see Danielle Smith and her Conservative government fueling. We need to be recognizing, of course, that there are concerns, that there are concerns with provinces across the country. People are you know, they're able to raise those concerns, and we should be listening to that, and we should be trying to fix those. But you don't take your toys and leave. And right now I'm concerned about the foreign interference that's become clear is involved in that. You know, we see the United States, there is money coming from the United States into Alberta that is being used to fuel this divisive rhetoric. But I would call on Danielle Smith to be extraordinarily clear where she stands, because those questions, those referendum questions, they are divisive, they are racist, they are dangerous, and I think she is playing with fire at a time where we should be building unity, not separating.
Okay, you mentioned Quebec, and you know that is the other potential national unity challenge if the Parti Québécois wins the next provincial election, if they follow through on their promise to have a referendum on independence. You know, how can you, and to be fair, how can any of the leadership hopefuls in the NDP stand up for Canada for national unity in Quebec if none of the candidates have fluency in French?
Well, and this is something I'm working on. You know, I work on it every single day. It is a priority for me. My riding in Edmonton-Strathcona is actually the French quarter for Franco-Albertans. It's been a priority. It's a challenge. You know, it's hard to learn a language to be fully bilingual, but it's a priority for me. It's something I work on a lot. I think all of the candidates recognize that there is no path for the NDP that doesn't include Quebec, that doesn't include us having wins in Quebec, and for me, we'll keep working on it. I'm going to be planning on spending quite a lot of time. You know, we have seen other federal leaders that did not come into their position being fully bilingual, and I guess maybe I can thank the Prime Minister for lowering the bar for us all.
NDP leadership hopeful and MP Heather McPherson. Now you can see the full interview on YouTube. You can also watch it in an upcoming episode of Profile with Michael Serapio that will feature discussions with all the NDP leadership hopefuls. And as for Primetime Politics, that is our program for this evening. Parliament is away next week, but when Parliament comes back, so shall we. Until then, I'm Michael Serapio. For everyone here at CPAC, thank you for watching. Take care.